Welcome back to another banger show with GameGPT, Megaspace AI, and Gaming is the title of today's show with GameGPT by Prism, AI driven game engine with dual token. We have a bunch of absolute goated speakers hopping up on stage today. We have Mixie AI, create games using Mixie's no code platform, powered by our next gen AI gaming engine. We also have Michael from Today, co founder and CEO of Today the Game, former Nintendo and Sega. Oh, my childhood, right in the nostalgia there, people. And we have Wham AI, crypto gaming app with 3.5 million users, decentralized gaming, powered by AI, governed by Wham token. It's going to be a really fun one today. I'm super excited for it. I cannot wait to dive into the show. And honestly, guys, this has to be one of the conversations to have at the moment. It's like AI is everywhere. And I think one of the clearest use cases, at least that I have seen people try and discuss, because it's so fun to discuss, is how it's going to impact the gaming world. So I cannot wait to learn from all of you legends here up on stage, all the experts we have brought to you in the room. And for the listeners, if you are excited for today's show, this is the time to show that support. Let's get the likes and the retweets of the show out there. Really easy way to show support for the show, to show support for the experience that we're going to bring to you today. I think I'm honestly, this one to me, I have a lot of questions. I'm just on a really selfish personal note. I'm going to try and not ask those questions because I want to make sure that you guys in the audience get the most value from today's show. But look, if I feel like there's a bit of crossover and it's a win, then some of those questions are going to get asked as well. Come on, people, I'm only human. Right. I know I do get like how much of a pun that was whilst we're talking about AI right now. I do get that. It definitely didn't just dawn on me as I said the words. That being said, let's dive straight into it. Who do we have behind GameGPT's account today? Welcome to the stage. Are you excited for today's show?
Super excited. What's going on, Jack? Always a pleasure every Tuesday morning to be here. It's
Love
Devin,
it.
co-founder at GameGPT. Really happy to be here. Have an awesome panel of some really interesting people that I think are going to make for some great conversation. Michael from Today the Game, I believe you're a returner, and we have two new guests as well. Really excited to chop it up and to talk about building games with AI, how AI is going to intersect with gaming, and everything else. I think that has been, just like Jack said, a hot topic for everything that's been going on over this year for sure. So let's get into all of it and let's see how each of us are using it, because I'm sitting here as a student ready to learn. It's awesome.
I love it, man. And yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Like we've got experts, we've got me learning as a student, and but no matter what, there's all people trying to use this tech in all wonderful, weird, different ways. We can learn stuff from each other. Like there's nobody on stage today I don't think we can't learn from in some way, shape, or form. And I'm sure that even speaks to the speakers themselves as well. So I'm super excited to get into this one. Devin, I'm going to throw the mic straight back at you with a question, and then we're going to open this up to the panel. Can't wait. How is AI being integrated into the game development process from concept to completion right now, in your opinion? A huge question, but I think just some bullet points on like how to really push this space forward as someone who's really coming from that I want to be educated standpoint.
Yeah, great question. The best answer that I can give you that answers your question as accurately as possible is everyone is using AI in their own way to make their game development process more efficient and get a shipped product out to their users faster. The mechanism in which game development is being bolstered by AI is probably being used differently for each of the companies that are on the panel today. And that's what I think is going to be really cool. What I can speak most about is what GameGPT is doing. And we're actually building an AI model that can create games for users or small game development teams. If our model V1, and which we're just calling GameGPT V1, is going to be very narrow, and it's going to create what we call hyper casual games. If you're a game developer, you probably know what the term hyper casual means, but it effectively means like those viral, kind of short form, fun, maybe you play it every 10 or 15 minutes whenever you get some time on your mobile phone type of games. So if you've ever played Fruit Ninja before, if you ever played Temple Run, Subway Surfer, if you've ever played games like Snake.io, Angry Birds, Fruit Ninja, and so many others, that is what we're training our initial AI model to do. As we're going to get into it, the tools that you can use to build a game are going to be pretty much in every aspect of a game different than others. Whether it's, I think our conversation last week, we talked about using AIs to effectively bridge a connection between the player and the game, to actually teach NPCs to be better conversationalists. You can use it to create 2D and 3D visual assets. You can use it to create the code base or the game logic behind your game. There's so many things that we're going to get into, but that's what we're about. We actually have a pretty cool announcement because hopefully by the beginning of September, we're going to be launching 15 new games onto the platform. And a mobile app is set to schedule to come out mid to end of September as well. GameGPT Summer, which is our post that's pinned on our profile, is going to be coming in hot, and we're really excited for it. But we'd love to take it around and see what everyone else is doing as well.
I love it, homie. And look, I know we also have Connor here, head of partnerships for GameGPT. Connor, how did Devon do there? Did he cover that all for you? Is there any like nuances you'd like to add before we get round to these great speakers?
No, I think Devin covered pretty much everything that GameGPT is doing. But as far as what I'm most excited about, and it seems like it was something Devin already touched on, is creating NPCs that can either help you much more directly in a game to understand and feel immersed, or just to have something that we've never been able to create before because characters are limited to SI, like simulated intelligence, what's coded into it. So I'm excited to see what comes of the evolution of NPC AI. I think that is going to be a really interesting and cool personal development for me just to see where it goes.
Oh, I love it, man. Yeah, definitely can't wait to dive into it with these guests as well. Let's throw this over to Michael. How is today? My mic is doing that thing where it puts me on mute if I slightly tap it, and I'm a very animated human being, so that happens quite often. I apologize, guys. I hope I will basically tie my hands behind my back for the rest of the show or mute with my nose. Look, guys, Michael, I need to throw this question over to you here. How is today integrating AI? We've just talked to Devin and we've just talked to Connor about this, and it's very unique for each project. So would love to get your take and your experience from today's point of view. And again, the project, not the day.
Thank you very much for that clarification because I was going to launch into a very long winded appraisal of how my day has been going. Yeah, now, first of all, great to be here again. Thanks to GameGPT for this cool mega space, and it's a privilege to be on chatting about such a fascinating topic with so many clever people. Yeah, thanks again for that. In terms of how we are implementing AI into our game, so really our game is about connecting with AI, what we call residents, essentially like AI beings. So you can think of it a little bit like as a pretty massive technological update to The Sims, whereby you're able to liaise with these different beings, virtual beings inside of this space, and kind of impact their lives and help shape some of their trajectory and help them out sometimes and be in compromising situations sometimes with them and stuff like that. And we're leaning into some aspects of that, but what we're doing is imbuing that with the quality that you get from AI in order to be able to build deeper personalities than you could ever manage inside of a game like The Sims. And the reason that we're interested in that is because we think that the future of games is going to, the NPCs are going to have a very prevalent part to play in the future of video games. And as NPCs become more interesting, non-player characters, for those of us who are not familiar with that acronym, yeah, I think that they're going to have a really big part to play in the future of games. Like, of course, botting has become a huge problem, but what if the bots are these people that are actually cohabitants inside of these digital spaces with us? And I think that's a fascinating concept and something that we spend a lot of time exploring. We've spent a lot of time and money, I would say, on engineering our own NPC character engine. It's called Dreamia. And using Dreamia, you're able to basically deploy these really richly intelligent, contextually aware beings into the world. And you can speak to them and they start adapting to the world and changing around their tastes and preferences according to what happens inside of the game. So it's honestly getting closer to what it's like to share a world with another player, and that's a pretty interesting concept as these beings live inside of these digital spaces.
Honestly, for me, and this is a theory that I have conceptualized whilst listening to yourself and so many experts and builders speaking around AI. I do foresee a future at this point where people genuinely perceive NPC players as friends. I do think we will get there in our lifetime, that there will genuinely be NPC characters where, you know, if it's like a huge landscape, there's a lot of travel involved. I'm thinking Skyrim, I'm thinking these huge open world games. You don't do it as a singular player anymore. You do have that sort of character that comes with you on your journey and other characters that come in, and they won't just progress the game forward, they will also progress you forward by asking you some really detailed questions, like having someone to play off and bounce off, and someone who you can open up to with no concerns about where that gets to. I think that could be honestly like groundbreaking for a lot of people, and it does. I am not by any means saying that will replace like actual human interaction. If anything, I think it will support it by opening people up and realizing that when they are opened up, they are like a well-rounded human being who should be going out there and finding some IRL friends. And there's definitely people like them on this planet. I can't wait to see how that all goes. A little romantic there, but honestly, when I hear you guys talk about this and the NPC side specifically, I do like my brain goes on a bit of a hyperdrive with all the different areas I think that one's going to expand into. Wham! I would love to get your take on this. Who do we have behind the mic? What are you building? What are you trying to utilize AI to do for your project?
Hi everyone, thank you for having me here. Exciting to share the stage with you and with everybody else. Wham, by the way, this is Danny, the co-founder and CEO of Wham, is a play-to-earn gaming platform, especially with hyper-casual games. When we started out in 2019, we saw the opportunity in this space, and we've been building ever since. And in the bear market, building translates to putting an IV in all sort of veins. Regarding NPCs, I have friends that are actual NPCs, but we're talking about the smart NPCs, and I do foresee the same future that you are foreseeing, where you can actually have characters that are no longer NPCs, by the way. So if you, in some way, gift these characters with some sort of intelligence that is required for the tasks that you're doing or for the environment, they are already participating. Now, at WAM, we started out pretty much in the same space as GameGPT, so we're in the same zone. But at the same time, while doing it, we figured out, or we didn't figure out, we stumbled across a problem that is also solvable in games with AI, and that is fraud prevention, detection, and mitigation. So a lot of Asian ending words. And AI in games, I would say it's a multifaceted conversation, and it will present itself to the market with different solutions for different problems. As I mentioned, like NPCs, like game generation, game design, game coding, user-generated content with AI, so users can actually create their games and experience, or user AI game customization for users. So based on your gameplay, the game itself will evolve based on your skills, especially, for instance, in hyper-casual games, which are very skill-based. And you will no longer, I would say, you will no longer have deployment cycles. You'll have a continuous deployment cycle that is held by AI, where the game continuously progresses. And this is awesome for one simple reason: you no longer have to focus on the next thing that makes it fun as a game studio, because you have your model that is constantly trained on that specific user. So these are the things that I see AI being and driving the home run for games, especially casual ones played on the mobile phone.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I think One thing that just sprung to mind as you were speaking there was the idea that there's not going to be an end to cycles, or that there's not going to be any cycles, because the innovation and the power that it unlocks just means that the continuous development will just be a lot more seamless, and the integration of that development will also be a lot more seamless, which are these two really chunky aspects of development right now that usually clash. As development comes in, actually integrating that development is its own thing, its own technology, its own cycle, and to push up and update and like to also create, these are things that generally have to happen in their own individual silos. One other thing that links me to this is enhancing creativity around both of those areas, because that's, I think, the biggest concern I have heard actually from a lot of gamers at this point, and like something I, at least in some sentiment, share. I think I have been turned to the dark side on AI, where I'm just really hyper bullish on this thing now. Like, just from speaking to you guys, hearing how it's going to be utilized, and hearing how you guys are considering the utilization of the project, it just, I think it's still fundamentally at the creator's control at some level. So as long as the team behind this who are building it, like, they're trying to utilize it in the right way, but I still have a lot of confidence in that. Being said, Devin, I'll throw this to you first. Happy for Connor to chime in on this one as well. What ways does AI enhance the creativity and efficiency of game design, based on what Wham has just said? But also, are there any potential shortcomings there in terms of AI? To me, still see it's still what's the word? It's still tech. It's not fully conscious at this point, where I would be confident that it's going to surpass a team of creatives working with AI. Like, how do you fathom this? Like, how do you look at this from a creative standpoint, from someone looking to utilize AI?
Yeah, so a lot of ways we can go with this question. Maybe what I can say is like AI, and I think this is adjacent to the question that you want answered. And my response is akin to AI is going to be able to help more and more types of games over time. But right now, the types of games that it can help, like in terms of building the game, are more towards the kind of like fast paced, singular game loop type of games. Right now, the AI model, like I've talked about, can build hyper casual games. But if you wanted a Skyrim, like we all know and love, we've all played, I don't know how many hours of that game I probably have, but I guess the modern versions being like Baldur's Gate 3 or everything else, those type of games, the progression that's involved and the sheer complexity involved in making the maps, making the game logic, making the combat system, are all ways that are still going to need a ton of human intervention to be involved. But there are corollaries. There is things on the fringes of these types of games that AI is slowly eating more and more of. Turning like a 2D image into a 3D render on Blender or a 3D render on Unreal Engine. I've actually just found AI products that are actually getting pretty good at that. In terms of the actual map creation in 3D areas, whether it's with a battle royale or whether it's with just a normal kind of like arena shooter, I've actually been in talks with a pretty cool AI company called Atlas AI, who's actually doing that for some of the biggest gaming companies in the world, but also some of the biggest Web3 games like Shrapnel. I think being able, just like on the fringes, to have AI be able to 3D or I guess generatively populate the maps that you're making is just slowly going to be its own way of taking this original vision that is, with a lot of human intervention, inspired, but being able to be put out into the world in easier time. I've talked about on a few spaces, I think it was a few weeks ago, how our AI model actually partners with Suno.ai to generate all of the music for all of our hyper casual games. So if right now the actual soundtracks within games can be created with Suno, but in the future, maybe a 3D real space like sound design can be made with AI, or maybe sound effects can be made with AI. That is just another super tedious, super technical type of game that really adds to the immersiveness that I think AI is on the fringes of being able to do. I'm not saying it's coming here next month, but definitely in the months or years to come, something that I think an AI company, if it can establish itself to do that, has huge foothold into what everyone's trying to build and bring in real utility to everyone. So that is one of many ways. I'm not sure if I answered your question exactly in the way that you asked it, Jack, but that's how I see this. And I think creativity is going to be inspired in a way. If there are going to be, if you needed, I don't know, let's just put arbitrary numbers out there, a team of 10 people and at least a $5 million budget to build any kind of RPG type game before. But with the help of AI, the total amount of energy that you can put into creating your vision brings that cost down by 5 times, by half, by 10, like 1/10 of the price. And that means that more people can be creatively enabled to create that vision, to create that game that they want. And I think that's how I would approach creativity actually merging with AI and being able to bolster it. The amount of minds that actually can be able to be creatively expressed to create the game that they want is really what I think AI is going to do really well.
I love this take. And look, you definitely did answer the question. I think for me, someone who sees like the role I play now as like at least semi-creative, having these conversations, considering where they have to go, also creating content, like the also gaming and like actually creating content around those sides. All of this I have now utilized AI for. And I don't believe, and it was definitely a concern, especially in the early days, to a point I nearly just didn't get involved with it, where I was very skeptical of, but what if this takes away from me and my creativeness? And it just very much is a tool that you you choose to utilize, sorry. And I think that's going to be the same for projects as well. I do think it could have those shortcomings. If I'm being completely transparent, I don't think they will be successful. So I think it's actually down to the individual and the projects that are building to say, look, what problems are we looking to solve? Are there any creative problems? What do we love? What do our creators love? What are the people we've hired in those positions? What are the problems that they would love to solve? And what are the things that bring them into work and make them passionate every day? How do we leverage one to create more of the other? And you do that if you're in a senior team in any aspect of the world. If you've got people who actually genuinely love what they do, that's always your end goal. Realistically, if you want to retain talent, you say, look, what part of the role do you currently hate? What part of the role do you love? What is the thing that when you wake up, you're excited to do each day? And you try to give them more of that stuff they love about their role, as long as it also contributes to the end goal of the project. Obviously AI is going to be impactful to that, and obviously it's going to be the decision of the creators and the businesses themselves on how to utilize that AI. So just keep solving the problems. It's that straightforward. If a company does come in and say we just don't need as many creatives, or we're going to let go some staff and we're going to do this, we're going to do that, very interested to see how that all plays out. I personally perceive that will be a huge red flag, and probably something that in the long term is going to hurt rather than hinder. It's all an open playing field right now. So really interesting to talk about this at depth. Let's keep going in the problem solve world. So I would love to bring in the other speakers to this, and also Connor, if you have any takes on this, either throw that hand in the air. All of you speakers, by the way, if you've got hot takes, hands in the air, give me an emoji, give me a sense you want to come in on the conversation. I'll throw the mic straight over to you. To all the listeners, if you're enjoying the conversation, big ask from me. Let's show that support, likes, retweets. And if you like any of the individual takes on the show, go follow those guys as well. They're all creating really cool, innovative stuff. Efficiency gains. I think we just talked about it. I went on a slight tangent monologue on what are the problems that need to be solved and what are the things that creators want to do more of, or whatever your role is. Why do you do it? If you love it and you love your job, what is it about that job you love, and what do you want to continue to grow, and what are the parts that you wouldn't actually mind getting rid of, or at least making more efficient? So that's really the way I want to direct this conversation. And the specific question is, what are the main efficiency gains that AI provides in game development currently? And are there any specific examples? And it can be you guys as builders, but also if there's anything that you know in the traditional world that are utilizing AI, I would love that take too. I think those contrasting examples could be very interesting here. Michael, your hand is raised. Thank you very much, homie. I'll throw the mic straight over to you.
Yeah, I think the most obvious gains are, first of all, having an extra voice in the room to be able to bounce ideas with. we've got some really good game designers over here who've made some massive games, and we all, like, whether you've made massive games or not, we all decide just like to riff our ideas and put it through, because sometimes it might give you an idea that you didn't think about, or it might give you a like constructive criticism that you didn't think about it as well, because it's extremely smart. So that's really useful from when you're designing, when you're working through bugs even. We've tried to encourage our developers as well to use ChatGPT for things like code reviews in order to be able to get cleaner code. And that's worked reasonably well so far. The clear kind of gains that we've seen so far, I think, is the ability to generate 2D art. So like things like icons or sprite sheets and stuff like that, you're able to develop quite fast. Things like concept art, you're able to move really fast. Before we started this journey, we were working with some concept artists who we've had to pay very high amounts of money to try to get what was in our head onto the page, because we didn't have enough skill to be able to put those things down on paper. And we never fully got there, right? You never, when you're working with someone, you're trying to communicate an idea, sometimes you can never fully get there. But now our creative director is able to riff way faster and concept ideas inside of things like Midjourney. This is extremely liberating. What's coming next is, of course, the ability for us to generate 3D. And that's where the massive game changer comes from a game development perspective, in my view, anyway. There are huge game development budgets out there, and normally a substantial part of those game development budgets are on the creation of 3D art. And once we're able to generate 3D art, it's going to change the face of video games. I've referenced before that when you think about games like the upcoming GTA, we're probably thinking of art budgets of potentially $500 million. But this could be the last time that we ever see those kind of art budgets ever again. Now, of course, that means that there's going to be a total changing of the guard, that like the precious nature of some artistic skills will change, right? Like when you're able to generate things, all of a sudden modeling just doesn't, it's not as important in the process anymore. Now, on the flip side, what it does is it liberates people to be able to create games with a lower degree of technical skills than before. And I think that that is a net benefit for culture. Lots of really amazing things that can happen over the, like, it's already happening. We've already introduced various different things into our pipeline for game creation, but it's going to be increasingly happen. We're only kind of scratching the surface. And then, of course, there's the idea that you're actually riffing to create the game itself, the code, the underlying code, and the mechanics, which, for example, I know is what our kind hosts are looking at. So lots of really cool and exciting stuff.
I love it. And Wham, I saw a bunch of emojis from you here, so would love your take on this as well. I think it's definitely a question that I would like to get some polar opinions to, or at least see that sentiment share. So Wham, I'll throw the mic over to you on this. Like, how do you consider real world application, if there's any case studies there, but also like where do the efficiency games come from when we talk about this stuff?
Awesome topic. Okay. The first thing that I see tedious, especially with games that have economics and now that they're being combined with the blockchain, is actually making that economy work. And having a model that can learn how people behave and adjust parameters based on their input is invaluable. And that takes a lot of time and trial and error, and that can be, let's say, reduced. Now, the creativity side and the game design process will also be greatly improved. And benefiting from a model that can, I don't know, improve your output in leaps and bounds, and that makes you as a game studio release games faster, test ideas faster, is something that right now a lot of game studios pay a lot of money for and raise money for, and most of the times don't find the money for. So this is one of the things that I see improved. Another thing that I see improved is the art. I think Michael mentioned it. I totally agree with it. I've worked with hundreds of artists in the past, I would say 15 years, since 2007. And while you find awesome, and there are amazing artists, sometimes there are situations where you no longer benefit from their talent mid-project, or something happens and you no longer have the same style, the same speed, the same skill. And this is where AI comes in. You no longer have to be afraid as a studio about this type of, let's say, drawback, because it is a drawback. I'm just specifying the cases where as a company, you can lose momentum or you can lose a lot of months because of the artwork. The other part, and I think we spoke about this in last week's space or two weeks ago in a similar topic about rigging and making the characters move in a certain way. This is also where the stuff can be improved, and also coding. It's something that it is right there. And we had this debate, I think, last week as well. Who is AI going to help, especially with the coding side on the games, in the games industry? And it will help senior programmers. This is just my take, at least at the beginning, where they can improve their speed, decrease their bugs, and overall help them ship better code.
I like this. I think, yeah, I remember this conversation too. And it is one of those questions that the world is getting less code heavy with AI. I think that's probably a fairish statement, depending who you are. I know there's different variations of takes on here. From what I have heard so far from developers, from friendships, but also during shows like this, is it's still very dangerous to develop code with pure reliance on AI, because if you don't understand the code you're developing, it's basically putting band-aids, putting plasters, what depending where you are in the world right now, on the build of a game. And eventually there's only so many band-aids and plasters you can put on something where it's going to need more. It's going to need stitches. It's going to need actual medical attention, surgery. There's only so much you can do with a band-aid, people. And I think that is something that I've heard time and time again from developers at this point is, look, it's fantastic. It also helps learning speed, because you do, I think it was mentioned on this space just a little bit earlier, you have that person to riff with, even if it is AI itself, and you can learn a lot quicker with an expert in the room giving you more guidance. But if you're just like, create this code to help do X, Y, and Z, and it creates that, and you just insert it without understanding really what you're inserting, I think that's the level. So when you speak about senior developers and helps eradicate bugs, help support on that side, I understand exactly what you mean, or I believe I understand exactly what you mean, from why we haven't just said people who can't code, because that's still, I think, a long way off. And I do think, yeah, right now you still need that expertise. Connor, I'd love to bring you in on how you see the balancing of AI and human input, because we've talked about the efficiency gains, we've talked about real world application and the impacts to creativity and some of the concerns on that side. Is there a right balance for this thing? Was it 1 human to 10 inputs of AI? Is there a specific like formula that we should be looking at into the future? How do you see a growing, developing gaming studio play with these sort of boundaries of like, how many people do we actually need? Does it reduce the amount of people that we need, the efficiency that we can create, the development that we can create?
Yeah, I guess it depends from the start. Are you talking about, not you specifically, but like in general, are we talking about small studios, mid-sized studios, AAA studios? I think each of the types of people that make games will find different ways to utilize AI. Like a small indie team of 2 people, they're going to get a lot of use if those 2 people can understand code, can understand how to like input those things to avoid the sort of pitfalls you had mentioned. That those 2 people are going to get almost like infinite amount of use out of this AI to be able to speed up their process. They don't have the money or funding. It's just 2 guys with an idea or 2 people with an idea. They're not going to be able to hire a team. So maybe they can be creative with 5 or 6, maybe 10 different AI tools and figure out how to fill those gaps. Now, if it's like something like, I know D&D does this and Wizards of the Coast, they've been using AI for a lot of their art, and people have actually been calling them out on it because some of the art they used has not been vetted, and it is like very obviously AI. And I think that's something for some reason people want to see, is if you're going to use AI, at least make it a good AI image, because it's not that hard. If it's easy to make these images, make them good images. And so I think it's going to be a lot of, you're going to see some companies get lazy, and you're going to see some companies get like infinitely better because they're going to utilize the tool in the way that I guess it was meant to be used. I guess it's like a hammer or like a saw. If I take a hammer outside and start smacking a tree, it's probably not going to be that useful to me, but like the guy that needs a hammer across the street could probably really use it. So I really think it's about like how people are implementing AI and balancing like what their teams need, and it's probably different for every team. But I'm excited for indie developers specifically being able to like have this tool that makes them competitive with larger teams.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I do think there's look, again, you've just mentioned it. Like, it does depend how you utilize it, and I don't think we can even fathom the ability like a AAA studio could do that. If we're talking about perfect synergy, like perfect, like a project, a game, a studio that can utilize it perfectly for their given scenario, I'm not sure what comes out on top in that regard. I do think from what I can fathom and imagine, indie studios get, as you say, a lot more runway with this, and I think they almost gain an advantage, which is interesting to me to understand. Do these new studios now have an advantage on some of these broader studios? As it's obviously just going to take more time, right? Like the same way scale does, the same way anything does. Once you hit like a certain size and you obviously have more people to consider, it's going to take more time to figure that out, because it's not an individual question that you're trying to ask. But if you are trying to ask that individual question, I think it's definitely something that, as an indie studio, you're just gonna have so much fun with, and it's just gonna give you that opportunity to really push the boundaries on when somebody else needs to come in. And also it's gonna allow you to hire way more effectively, because you're also probably gonna look for someone who understands the AI side as well. Look, guys, I'm really enjoying this question. I think there is a nuance to this with, and Connor, I'm gonna bring your question over to Devin a little bit and then open it up to the other speakers as well. Again, speakers, anytime you raise a hand, I'll throw the mic straight to you. We just mentioned about how the art in D&D is perceived like it's almost getting negative press right now because of the quality. Is it just a quality issue, or do we think stuff like art, in terms of like its purest form, its creative form, is causing a little bit of backlash due to the fact that it's created by AI, and people are still, they've got almost like a bit of a hipstery approach to, no, real art needs to come from a human? Do we think that's any part of this that's being played, or is it purely just the quality of art and the fact that if you're going to use AI, there really should not be any reason for you not to create perfect art with it? We know it can be done. So, Devin, I'll throw the mic to you on this, and then we'll get over to Mixie.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. I think the Wizards of the Coast / D&D question is a little bit nuanced, just because who that community is. I know there was probably more backlash than usual from that company, just because the D&D community is a special one. They definitely treasure and put a lot of accolades on the artists within the community. And when they see like the handbooks and other art that's pushed out by Wizards of the Coast and all the guidebooks use AI art, they may see it as them not putting as much, I don't know, attention or favorability towards the community of artists that it has. And I think that is probably similar to the Hollywood stance, that AI is taking away creative jobs and that it's not very good. But in terms of the people who are building things like games, like in the space that we're in, or are using AI to write stories and all of that, I'm sure the stance is completely different based on how you look at AI and how you're using it. My personal opinion, I'm sure, is different from the people who had a negative opinion on what Wizards of the Coast was doing. But yeah, I think AI, much like what Michael was saying earlier in the call, it can be used as like this thing to bounce ideas off of. If your own creativity can actually be enhanced because you have this creative outlet, this assistant, this almost partner that you can talk about ideas with and throw ideas at, and it can perhaps give you more feedback, give you more a new perspective that you didn't have before. It's actually not taking anything away from you. It's actually making you a better artist than you were before. So I think it really depends on how you're using it and the stance that people have when they're using AI. I'm sure all of us are techno optimists and we have our own optimistic opinions about what it is. But just like Web 2 gaming to Web 3 gaming, there is like a huge stigma right now with a lot of traditional gamers who may view NFTs and Web3 games with a negative light. But it's our job to slowly adopt these people and to find ways that we can make common ground and help them see the light in a sense. So that's where I'm at with this.
That's a soundbite right there, Devin. That is such a good comparison. Like, actually, I think everybody who's in this space in any way, shape, or form will resonate heavily with, honestly, a miscomprehension of the space, whether that be AI or Web3. And I think that's such a great example, because immediately my perspective shifts from, oh, maybe they do have a point, or maybe they don't, but I just don't really know, to slightly more to the positive of maybe they're just not quite educated on it, and maybe they're just a little scared. And maybe there's good reason to that. Like, maybe there are people utilizing it in a way that is like negative, but at the end of the day, this is a technology, and technology really comes down to the person using it, not to the technology itself. It can be encompassed in a bunch of different ways. Mixie, I'd love to throw the mic over to you. Welcome to the stage. Who do we have behind the mic? And would love your take on this.
It's grim. I'm a big ambassador for AI. You heard me speak like thousands of times before. And when people tell me like, we are getting to the point of like more and more realistic results, we shouldn't be afraid of that, because that's actually going to nurture a new level of creativity. And we've seen it with also that technology that we are developing. Having a game created out of nowhere without needing to learn coding, that can be something that allows people to imagine and approach creativity in a whole new way, where there was so many limitation to how people create new mediums. Before we had YouTube, nobody wanted to record themselves and publish themselves on a platform. But since now we have all these technologies, we have all these things going for us for the future, I think this is amazing, because it's just breaking down so many barriers. The creativity of the human race has just been given the potential of doing whatever they can imagine. Imagine also one thing, when I was a child, I always thought that I wanted to be able to convey my imagination to a way that people, or I could see it, I could experience it. Nowadays, you can create music, you can create videos with a prompt, and you can make it movie quality. You can create beautiful photographs. And the next step in evolution, games, so many things that we can do. And the future is so bright. I think it's so bright. So I would never be afraid of having AI as part of everything that we do on a daily basis.
I do get the fear, in all honesty, and I wholly resonate with your point you've just made. I think it's a fantastic one. If I was an artist, or if I was a creator that had found my passion, a little bit like I try and put myself into the perspective of this space. Say, for example, AI evolved tomorrow where it can just capture my voice. It can give my takes in more of a formed, more of a nuanced way. It's basically just better in every single way as a co-host. I love what I do right now, and I would be scared of that version of AI coming for my role. But as we all say, like, it depends on the tool itself. And I just don't think that's really where AI is coming, because it essentially is coming to solve issues. And me on spaces isn't an issue. It's a passion. It's a love. So I think that is the nuance there. I think we need to be considerate of it as creators, as people utilizing this technology, for that reason of, if we consider it and we don't have that polar reaction to any contrary opinions, I think that's how we bring more and more creatives onto our side. I do think that, yeah, if I was an artist right now and was seeing like some of this tooling coming out and say, where is my new role in this world? I would have questions. I do believe there's answers to those questions that will make them more bullish on the space moving forward, though. And that's the big caveat that I think a lot of these current creators just aren't getting. They're just not getting that actually there is an answer to the concerns that they have, and it's actually a way more fascinating future, and it's probably a future of evolution for the whole art space that we have yet really haven't seen since probably the Renaissance. Honestly, I can't think of a bigger change to art than right now. Look, that was again a little monologue-y, but I like very passionate about this. Devin, I want to bring you in for the audience right now. Are there any final points that you'd like to speak to? Anywhere you'd like to take the conversation before we run out the show? We are close to the end of the show. And to all our listeners, again, definitely follow these guys up on stage if you've enjoyed the conversation today. Let's get the likes and retweets of the room out for that final time as well, because this space is recorded. So it's not too late. We can still bring people in here and they can access the whole conversation, even if they tune in right now. Devin, mic over to you.
Yeah, And maybe we can close with an idea, really, because Jack, I think you've touched on a lot of things in all of the panelists. I think we lost Michael in Today the Game, but they were a great panelist as well. We've touched on a broad scope of topics, and we've talked about a lot of things. One thing that I thought was alluded to that we didn't really cover directly was this idea that AI is technology, and technology effectively is a way to get more outputs for the amount of energy or that you put in for something. And so, if it's enhancing productivity without more man hours being put in, there is this kind of weird idea that people think, I don't know if it's a weird idea, I think it actually probably has pretty sound logic, that they would assume that a lot of their jobs are going to be taken by AI. But I'd like to pose a different angle, a different perspective, like how to view what AI is going to do. And I'm going to I'm going to borrow some of the idealisms from Naval. Naval, his full name is Naval Ravikant, but Naval is like the name he's known by. He's really popular in startups in the tech world, but he's also really popular for being a really big Bitcoin advocate and like a crypto advocate in the space. He has a ton of really awesome stuff. He has a book that I thought is really good called The Almanac. But effectively, one of the ideas that he put forth that I really resonated with was this idea that work is going to change and it's going to become more decentralized because of AI. Like I mentioned earlier, if our vision comes to light from everyone on the panel, but definitely what we're doing at GameGPT, the amount of effort that it requires to build a game is going to be substantially lower 6 to 12 months from now than it is right now. And when you look at the broad scope of how many people there are in the world and how many people that can affect, that means that the amount of effort that it takes to build a game gets drastically reduced, and hopefully thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people can build a game that couldn't have in the world of old. And I think what that means is, now merging that idea with Naval, is a lot more people are going to find themselves as almost self-employed, following their own creative ambitions, and with the help of AI, being able to build, whether it's software, whether it's a video game, whether it's art, whether it's a host of things. Maybe it's just consulting. Like, they're going to be able to find it easier to work by themselves or with themselves in a world that isn't requiring for you to work for some really big corporation. And I think when you look at it with that scale, AI isn't taking away people's jobs. It is more so empowering you, if you embrace the technology, to be self-employed and to be able to use your own creative expression, to be able to focus what you're good at and your natural strengths in a way that you've actually never been able to do so before. And that's, as always, the techno-optimist view that I'm going to put forth on these spaces. But that's really how I think, in our own contribution in game development, what we're trying to do, and I'm sure tons of people in tons of different industries are also going to do. That's the idea that I want to leave with before we get into other things and before we talk about what else we have going on. In terms of what GameGPT has going on, summer is going to be the day for a lot of things. Like I talked about in the opener, with the mobile app, with 15 new games being launched, and with Creator Program Season 0. Be prepared for a lot of new announcements coming very soon. I think Creator Program Season 0 is going to be awesome because we're actually building games that our community asked for. We're partnering with those people who had the idea and have sent forth their application for the game that they want built. And you're going to be seeing a lot of information about what those games are. And we're going to have personal meetings with community members that put those game ideas forth. We're really excited for it. And I think we have a really bright rest of this year coming. Yeah, that's where I'd like to end with. Jack, I'll pass it over to you and we can go with whoever we want from there.
I love it, Devin. And look, yeah, I think that is just such a great round off of the conversation today. And honestly, one we could make a consistent segment in this show. Like, I think it broadly, we've very much today talked really broadly about like how these things are coming to light and how actually we shouldn't be scared of them. I think we can really get into the weeds with this topic in a way that a ton of the audience would value. Audience, always hit us in the comments with this sort of question as well. If you've got a specific question or a specific expectation from a show, whether it was met or not, would love to see that feedback so we can curate new shows to make sure that it fits into why you've tuned into the show and what value you're looking for us to deliver. I think that's a big part of this as well, is that social audio side and that participation side. I think, look, we are very close to the end of the show, so there's only two things I need to do. One is thank every single speaker up on the panel, all from today, and also the project today, ironically. Have to thank GameGPT for putting the show together. Thank you, Devin and Connor, for always giving us your time and your expertise. And thank you, Wham, Mixie, and Today for all contributing to the conversation. And final thing from me is just really thank you to all the listeners who've tuned in. You guys are why we do this. As I've said, always give us that feedback. Hit us in the comments section if you've got a take. Give us the likes, give us the retweets, all of that good stuff. Really helps us to know that we're creating content that you guys enjoy, that you guys are getting some form of value from. Really love today's show. Thank you all.